Good evening, everybody. This is the weekly class of Jewish law. We're learning the laws of prayer and using the Mishnah Berurah. For those of you who have Mishnah Berurah, we're on Siman Kuf, which is chapter 100, and we're going to start with Halacha Aleph. This week we're going to talk about the intent that one has to have during prayer, and some other related halachas and certain preparations that should be done before one prays. And we're discussing here the Shmona Esrei, which is the 18 blessing prayer that was instituted by the men of the Great Assembly before the times of the Second Temple. And that's said 3 times a day during Shacharis, Mincha, and Marav. And that's what the halachas, the specific halachas of prayer that we're doing now, are in reference to the Shmona Esrei. Okay, let's start. Siman Kuf. Tfilas shel moadim v'shel roshei chadashim tzarich lahastir tfilaso kodem sheyispalel kadei shetehei shigur befiv. When praying the Shmona Esrei for the holidays or for Rosh Chodesh, one has to look over them after in order that the prayers are easily said. So every day the Shmona Esrei, every weekday the Shmona Esrei is the same. However, the Shmona Esrei changes when it comes to Shabbos. There's a different Shmona Esrei, a different prayer, and when it comes to the holidays, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, they're different, and also Rosh Chodesh, the prayers are different as well. So the Shulchan Aruch says that since one is not used to saying these prayers, he has to look them over before the holiday to familiarize himself with the prayers so that he can daven them better. Right? We have Shavuos coming up, and on Yantiv, there's a different formulation of prayer, so on Shavuos, one should look it over, according to the Shulchan Aruch. Now, he doesn't say Shabbos, probably, because Shabbos, the Shmona Esrei, we're more familiar with, because we say it once a week. It says the Ramah, V'yesh omrim dafka kishmispalim al peh, au kishmispalim mitoch hasider mutter, deharoet masha mispalel. V'chei nogim. He writes that we only have to prepare and look over the prayers beforehand if we're praying by heart, if we're davening by heart. But if we are davening from a siddur, from a prayer book, then we do not have to make those preparations. So nowadays, most people, when they daven on Yantiv or Rosh Chodesh or whatever, they are davening from a prayer book. So you would not have to look over the prayers before you are saying them, because we're not worried you're going to mess up so much because you've got the prayer book right in front of you. So let's see the Mishnah Berurah, the comment to the Mishnah Berurah. V'shel roshei chadashim, kein hagirsa b'kama svarim, ubeir hagrav rotz omer tfilas musaf. Now, when we say Rosh Chodesh, what prayer is that referring to in Rosh Chodesh? So the Vilna Gaon says that means musaf, right? So what's the service on Rosh Chodesh? So we wear tefillin and we daven Shacharis, and then we say a half Hallel, and then we lane, and after that we do musaf. So musaf, that's said once a month, but the rest of the prayers of Rosh Chodesh is the same as every other day. So he says, of course, you don't have to prepare those prayers. It's referring to Musaf. So actually what I just said wasn't totally true. When I said the prayers of Rosh Chodesh are totally the same, there is one part of Shacharis which is not totally the same as every other day. What is that? That's Yalav Yavo. There's a special insertion for Rosh Chodesh called Yalav Yavo, which we make on the holidays and Rosh Chodesh. So that, he says, you should go over and look it over beforehand so you familiarize yourself. The Shacharis Bimei, or Alanissim, if it's before Hanukkah or Purim. Hanukkah or Purim, we add Alanissim in the prayers, even though the rest of the prayers are totally the same in Shmona Esrei, but we add Alanissim. So Alanissim, that prayer should be looked over beforehand. Gam ken tzarich lahaster mitchila, or to look into the siddur. Again, this was going according to the Shulchan Aruch. But again, if you have a siddur, most of us pray from a prayer book, then you should, then you don't have to look it over beforehand. However, there are people who've been davening for a long time. They can say Yalav Yavo by heart. They say the whole, for sure, you see people davening all the time and saying the weekday Shmona Esrei by heart. However, when it comes to Yalav Yavo, if you're going to say that by heart, according to this, you should really look it over beforehand. If you're saying it from a siddur, you don't need to. But if you're saying it by heart, then you really should look at it beforehand. And there's the Shiurei Knesset HaGedolah, he was very surprised. He would see people, they weren't praying from a siddur, and they didn't prepare. He doesn't know what they were doing. He says, nevertheless, he said one should at least, if you're someone who likes to pray by heart and you know all the prayers by heart, you should nevertheless, the first prayer of the holiday you should say from a siddur, so you familiarize yourself with the prayer. Okay. Kishim is palim al peh. Kasav machaz shekel shaloka din nogim ha'olam she'omen birkas kiddush levana bal peh ve'ena masajin oso mitchila v'ayim mishari tshuva. What about kiddush levana? Every month after Rosh Chodesh, we say kiddush levana. It's a mitzvah. We go out when the moon is just starting to show, a few days after Rosh Chodesh, and we say kiddush levana. So he says here that some people would say it by heart. He said that's incorrect. They say it by heart without preparing themselves first. That shouldn't be done because kiddush levana is something which is only said once a month. And if you're saying it by heart, you have to look it over first. So Kiddush Levana should be said from a siddur, from a prayer book. Okay, mitoch siddur utfilasu piyutim shechamor perushim tzarich lahasder tchila lo mahani sefer b'zeh. Interesting. There are piyutim. If you look in like a machzer, right, a lot of the stuff we say on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur are piyutim. There's also piyutim, extra prayers that were said on the holidays. You can, if you have a machzer, a special siddur for Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, you'll also see these piyutim. He says that even if you're saying them from a siddur, you should still look it over beforehand because the translation and the interpretation is very difficult. So if you say these piyutim, even though it's just a custom, he's saying you should really look it over beforehand and should familiarize yourself. Probably that would seem to apply by slichos also, right? When we say slichos before Rosh Hashanah, the translation, the interpretation is very, very difficult. It's very hard Hebrew. It's very difficult to understand. So it's very good to look it over beforehand. You know, at any time you look something over beforehand, you have a greater appreciation when it comes to the holiday. It's definitely, Shavuos is coming up, and even though most of us will probably be using a siddur, it's still a good idea to look over the prayers, to know what we're saying, what we're celebrating on the holiday, and obviously to look over the laning and familiarize ourselves with the holiday. It will make it all that more meaningful. Okay, let's go on. That was Siman Kuf, short Siman. Let's go on to Siman Kuf Aleph. This is the laws of how one should pray and what you should have in mind. Let's start. Halacha Aleph. Hamispalel tzarich sheyichaven b'chol habrachos. When one prays, he should have intent in the meaning of all the blessings. What does that mean? That means to know the meaning of the words, right? No deep Kabbalistic stuff here, knowing all the Kabbalistic secrets of the prayers. Just simple meaning of the words. Now, for those of us, if you don't speak Hebrew, if you don't understand Hebrew, we live in a great time where you can get translations from numerous sources. And there's something I used to use which was great. I love the interlinear siddur from ArtScroll. It has the meaning of the words right under it. As you pray, you can see what the meaning of the words. But praying should be from our hearts davening to Hashem. If we don't know what the words mean, then we can't have our intent, proper intent. And let's say someone's unable to pray to have intent for the whole davening, right? It's a long davening. Very often we're distracted. We're thinking of breakfast or lunch or other things, and we just, especially if you're used to saying it, you can just rattle off the words and not even think of what you're saying. So if you can't have intent for the whole thing, you should have intent at least for Avos, which is the first blessing, right? Until Magen Avraham. You have to have intent. Now what if you didn't even have intent? You weren't thinking of the meaning of the words in Avos? Shulchan Aruch says it's so important to have intent at the first blessing of Shmona Esrei that if you don't have intent there and you're spacing out, you have to go back and daven again. That's the Shulchan Aruch. Now the Ramah writes, "Va'idna ein chozern b'shvil chsaron kavana, she'af b'chazar karav hu shelo yichav im kein lama yachzer." The Ramah says, no, we really shouldn't go back and pray again because what's going to happen? You didn't have intent during Avos. You weren't thinking of the meaning of the words. So you're going to go back to the beginning, and you're not going to have intent again. And you're going to have to go back again and again and again. So since nowadays we really don't have such great intent, and we don't really focus, you should not go back. However, if in the end of the day, if one doesn't think about the words that he's saying in Avos, the first blessing of Shmona Esrei, that's until Atag Yibor, right, until Magen Avram, then he didn't fulfill his obligation. You can imagine, you drive to shul, and or you walk to shul on Shabbos, and you get there, and you daven Shemona Esrei, and you don't have intent. You don't think of the words you're saying. You did all that effort, and you didn't fulfill the mitzvah of davening Shemona Esrei. It's a waste. That's not a waste. I shouldn't say it's a waste, but it's chaval. Now, also something I'm just going to add that people don't realize that anytime you say God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, you have to have in mind Adon HaKol, that He's the master of the universe. People, many of us are not aware of this, and that's a mitzvah to think about. Every time you say God's name in Shemona Esrei, you should think that God is the master of the universe. Oh, and just an Eitzah, some advice that Rav Chaim Volozhner gives about how to have intent when one davens. What he says to do is you take, before you say the words, let's say you have Baruch Atah Hashem, you look at the words and you understand the meaning, and then you say it, and then you stop, and then you look at the next words, and then you say them. So you pause after a few words, and you look at the words, and you get the meaning by looking at them, and then you say them. It takes a long time, but it definitely helps for having intent. Even if we just do that in the beginning of Shemona Esrei, it's very important. Okay, so let's do the Mishnah Berurah on what we just learned. Hamis Palel. So he says, even if a person can't have intent and can't know the meaning of the words when he's davening, nevertheless he should have intent at the end of each blessing, right? Because every blessing ends with Baruch Atah Hashem, right? XYZ. So in that end of the blessing of Baruch Atah Hashem, whatever it is, one should have intent in the meaning of the words. Okay, Sheikhavin, how to perish means, what does it mean, Kavana? Like we were saying, for the meaning of the words. Al-Kain Manachon Ma'od Lahamonim Shilmadu Perish Amilos Shalakal Atfilos. So he says how important it is that folks learn what the words of davening mean. There's a great book also out there. It's called Pathway to Prayer. I have it on my shelf. Very good book. And he goes through just explaining this in English, the simple meaning of the prayers. Okay. He says, nevertheless, and he says that nevertheless, one definitely has to know avos, which is the first blessing, where we said it's very important to have intent during the first blessing. And he adds here also modim. Modim is the Thanksgiving blessing. And he's going to cite soon that there are those that hold that just like you have intent, if you don't have intent during avos, you don't fulfill your obligation of Shemona Esrei. They also hold if you don't have intent during modim, you don't fulfill your obligation of Shemona Esrei. So one should for sure know, right? Next time, before we daven, if we don't know what avos and modim mean, we should take an art scroll siddur and read it in English so we know what all the words mean in avos and modim. Okay? So ba'avos. So we keep saying avos, the first blessing of Shemona Esrei. Why is it so important? Kihu sidur shvachu shel makom, because that is the praising God. Al kain einu badin shia az pona levavu l'dvar mecherim. V'yish poskim tingam modim chashuv ka'avos l'chatchila, and we just said that some hold that modim is like avos. That's where we thank Hashem l'chatchila. Now, if somebody is so distracted, he knows that he's not even going to be able to focus during the first blessing of Shemona Esrei of avos and to have intent, then you shouldn't daven at all. He should wait until he knows that he's going to have kavana, he's going to have intent during avos. Okay, and then we learned that nowadays, even though the Shulchan Aruch said, let's say we started Shemona Esrei and we get to Magen Avraham and we say, I was spacing out the whole time, I wasn't paying attention to what I was saying, what do I do? So we said that nowadays we don't go back because we probably would just space out again. V'idna, kasav v'chay adam, nearly, kaven de mitzad adin, sorach lachzor this pala, al kol panim, im nisker kodim shamar baruch atah Hashem b'sof bracha, yachzor loimer me'elokei Avram. But the Chaya Adam actually says, that's only, when don't we go back? That's only if we started the next blessing already. But he says if we haven't said Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham yet, if we were before Baruch, then he says you should still go back to Elokei Avraham. Right? So just, I know it's hard when we don't have a siddur in front of us, but when we're done, if you want to take out a siddur, right, the blessing starts Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Kolei Avosseinu Elokei Avraham, and then it ends Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham. So if you remember before you say Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham, that, I was spacing out, then according to the Chaya Adam, the Mishnah Berurah is quoting, you should go back to say from Elokei Avraham. Okay, now let's do the Be'er Halacha. We don't usually do Be'er Halachos, but let's do this one. Ve'idna ein chozrim. L'chora kavanaso im sayim hashmona esrei v'lo kivim ba'avos. Now, when did the Ramah say? The Ramah said we don't go back nowadays. If we realize we were spacing out during Avos, don't go back. So when did we realize we were spacing out? Be'er Halacha says he means when we finish Shmona Esrei, we finished the whole thing. I did the whole Shmona Esrei, and then I'm like, spacing out the whole thing even during Avos. Then you don't go back. Avolim Omed Eitzel Ata Gibor. But if, let's say you just say Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham, right, and you just finished it, and you finished the first blessing, and you didn't go on yet. V'nisko shelo kivim ba'avos keven mitzad adin lo yatzu bezeh heich namar lo sheyivarich od brachos shelo yatzu behem achrei de chaser lo birkas avos v'chim mipnei shekarov shelo yichavi namar lo sheyivarich od brachos shavada lo yatzu behem. Says what happens like this, right? The Ramah is talking about when you finish the whole Shemona Esrei. But let's say I just finished the first blessing. All right, I've been davening for 30 seconds and 20 seconds, whatever it is, and I said Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham, and I say, oh man, I was just spacing out. So what should I do? Mishnah Berurah has a question. If you keep on davening, then why am I doing that? Because I didn't fulfill my obligation for the first blessing, because I didn't have intent. So it's like I didn't say anything. So why would I keep praying? Why shouldn't I go back? That's his question. He said that's what I would think to say, but he says from the Chayei Adam, but we just read from the Chayei Adam. He says you do not go back once you finish the blessing Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avram. Once you said that, you do not go back. Only before that. So he doesn't understand why wouldn't you go back. So he's puzzled. Really, the Mishnah Berurah is saying, Be'er Halacha is saying that I would think that if you finished Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avram, totally finished the first blessing, you should go back and you should start again. But he says the Chayei Adam doesn't say that. The Chayei Adam said you go back, but only if it's before you finish the blessing, before you said Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham. So what do you do? What do we do? So this is what he says. I have another Eitzah. I have another solution to this problem. You should stop. If you say Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham and you realize I don't have intent, I was spacing out, what do? He says you should stop. V'yamtin al hashatz. Wait till the cantor, the person davening, says the repetition. Shiomer birkos avos v'yichaven latzis. And now when he says the repetition, and he starts saying the words, you should have in mind that you fulfill your obligation by listening to the cantor's repetition. And then when the cantor finishes the first blessing, then you start again yourself. Ata Gibor. Okay, so again, what do we do if we're in Shmona Esrei? So let's say first we finish Shmona Esrei and we realize we didn't have kavanah in the first blessing. What do? Nothing. We're stuck. We didn't fulfill our obligation. Stinks. What if we're in the middle of the first blessing and we realize that we didn't have intent? So we go back to Elokei Avram. That's what we do. Now, what if we just finished the first blessing and we haven't gone further yet? So according to the Be'er Halacha, we wait until the Chazin's repetition, and we have in mind to fulfill our obligations with the Chazin's repetition, and then when he gets to Ata Gibor, we continue by ourselves going. Now, what do we do with Marv? I guess there's nothing we can do really. There is no repetition of Marv, but fine. So we learned so far, just to review, that when someone, nowadays that we have a sitter, we don't have to look over the davening before the holidays, but it's always a good idea. We also learned that even if one has a sitter as a prayer book, when it comes to piyutim, the harder prayers that are said, we definitely should look it over. And we also learned that one has to have intent. Right. Someone just asked, what if there is no chazan? What do you do? So it sounds like you're stuck. And according to the Be'er Halacha was saying that he would think that you would, go back, but he says not to do that. It sounds like because the Chayei Adam says not to do that, but he seems puzzled. But in the end of the day, if you're by yourself, it sounds like you should just finish Shmona Esrei. I'll try to look into that question, see if there's anything else that could be done. Okay, thank you for the question. And right, so as far as intent during davening, we said that one should know the meaning of the words and preferably the whole Shemona Esrei. If not that, he should know the meaning of the words for the end of the blessings. But for sure, he needs to know the meaning of the words and to think of the meaning of the words when he or she says Avos, the first blessing of Shemona Esrei, and Modim, the Thanksgiving blessing. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to reach out, and have a beautiful evening.